So today we're taking a look at the 2023 HP Omen 16, and the last one I reviewed I think was the 15-inch model, and the vibes are still the same. You know, like you have this black laptop, the back kind of sticks out a little bit. There's no ports, unfortunately, to keep the cables clean, but I dig this look. You know, it's simple, it's clean, it's effective. Even like when you touch the top of the lid, yes, it's very, very flexible in the middle. I don't like that, but it has this matte vibe to it, which looks a bit different than like your standard aluminum chassis black laptop. And I think that's the thing, like this is a plastic laptop, so it gives you that matte look. It doesn't feel as premium as a Razer Blade 15, for example, but the price point of this is obviously much lower. It's a chunkier laptop, like it's pretty thick. It weighs about 5.2 pounds. And you have a good amount of I/O, but there's other gaming laptops out there that have a bit more. For example, you have an RJ45 port. This goes up to 1000 megabits per second. You have a USB-A port, and then on the right-hand side, you have your barrel connector, which connects a 230 watt power brick. This is a chunky guy. And then you have two more USB-A ports, HDMI port, and then you have a USB Type-C port. This Type-C port is not Thunderbolt 4, even though there's a 13th gen Intel processor inside of here. Opening up is very easy. You can do it with one hand. The screen is a little bit wobbly, but not nearly as wobbly as previous HP Omen 15. So they've tightened up the hinge a bit. You can obviously put the display all the way back, flat to the table if you really want to. And what you have here is a big 16-inch display. Now this display is not 16 by 10, it's 16 by 9. So it's your typical gamer display, or what we're used to from previous laptops. It's a matte display, so you don't get as much reflection as you would with a glossy panel. But my problem with this display, at least on this model, is that it's terrible. Like, it is an awful display if you're a designer. It's an awful display if you're watching content on this, because the sRGB is only 65%, and I think that's a really big bummer, because a lot about this laptop is really good, and this is probably my biggest complaint. Now, you do have 144 hertz refresh rate. The brightness is very average, but you do have a very good looking keyboard deck. The keys felt great to use when I was gaming. I didn't have any rollover issues. Like, I could press a bunch of the keys at the same time and it will register, whereas with some other gaming laptops it might not. You have a little macro key area over here. The only thing I don't like is I really wish they placed the delete key over here and then put the power button over here, because sometimes I'll be playing and then I'll go for the delete key, which is usually by the numpad on other laptops, and I end up hitting the Omen command center. Now this is a left-handed problem because I bind my keys all over here, but if you're not left-handed, then this really doesn't apply to you. Full-size arrow keys, you have 4 zones of RGB lighting, and because this laptop is completely black, it just looks really good when the light is on. You have a fairly good size touchpad at the bottom. Unfortunately, it is plastic, but it's accurate enough, and the sticker placement is awful. Like, the guy was literally playing pin the sticker on the donkey, had his eyes blindfolded, and it was just doing one of these, you know? Just one of these. Now, as you can see here, as the review is going on, it's starting to pick up a lot of fingerprints, so keep that in mind. This will get very, very dirty, but this SKU right here is using an i7-1362H CPU, paired with an RTX 4060 that runs up to 120 watts, 16 gigabytes of DDR5 RAM, and then you have a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. I think this SKU is specific to Canada because I was looking at the US SKUs and all of them are HX processors, so I don't know if this is coming to the States as well, but this is obviously a more, I don't know, budget version compared to some of the other Omen 16s that they're currently offering. Now, I did compare this to the G16 because it's very similar in terms of specifications, so it gives you an idea of what to expect if you're looking at either laptop. And when it comes to single core and multi-core performance, they both perform very, very well. It's not until you start using specific applications do you see that the HP Omen 16 does perform better. My guess is you have a thicker chassis, there's a lot more room to breathe, so it can keep things cooler for longer. It doesn't matter if you're using Adobe Photoshop, Premiere Pro, if you're talking about Blender or any sort of other application, the Omen 16 tends to beat out the G16. I did lower the resolution on the G16 from 1920 by 1200 to 1920 by 1080 to make everything fair, at least when it came to gaming. And most of the games on the Omen 16 did perform better than the G16. The only game that the G16 continuously beat out the Omen was when it came to F1 2022. So I don't know if I had something wrong in my settings. I went over it a few times, but I kept beating it out for some weird reason. But when it came to every other game, the Omen 16 was obviously faster. Now, heat management is very interesting comparing it to the G16 because the G16 obviously runs hotter. CPU temps are always up at 88, 89 degrees Celsius, which is not a big deal, you know, like it's fine if it's under 90 degrees. But the Omen 16 is a lot more conservative. CPU temps never passed 80. It doesn't matter how hard I pushed this laptop. Now, there's some advantages to this. The longevity of this Omen 16 is probably gonna be a lot better than the Zephyrus G16, but you do lose out in a little bit of performance. When things get crazy on the Omen 16, it just power throttles right away. Core clock speeds come right back down, but after a while, things start to even out. With the G16, it's always even across the board at the expense of higher temperatures. Now the speakers, nothing special. They're on the bottom of the laptop, they're a bit flat, there's no high end, the mids are completely drowned out, but you know, they get loud enough that you can hear them over the fans, but if you're using this, you probably want to keep headphones on the entire time. But it does have a full HD webcam, so you'll look your prettiest when you're on a Zoom call or if you decide to use the laptop for streaming. Now, getting inside is very easy on this laptop. I like the two big fans. You have two thick copper heat pipes running across the middle, a third one going along the side. And then you have two slots to upgrade your RAM. This is DDR5 and it can be upgraded to 64 gigabytes. Unfortunately, there's only one drive slot. Usually with 16-inch notebooks, especially gaming laptops, you get at least two, but for some reason on this model, there's only one. I feel like they could have put something over here. You have a swappable Wi-Fi 6E card, and then you have a big 83 watt-hour battery. And I actually got really good battery life with this guy. And I think that's one of the benefits of going with the weaker i7 compared to the HX processors that you'll find in different versions of this laptop. So here's the thing, when it comes to buying this Omen 16, it's gonna come down to the price because this is not the most premium feeling laptop on the market. But I do like the design. I think it looks really clean, it looks classy. I love the fact that you get great battery life on a gaming laptop. The RGB on this, if that's your thing, looks really, really cool. And, you know, for the most part, the performance was fantastic with some of the best temps I've seen on a gaming laptop in the last few months. But this display is absolutely horrible. They gotta stop sticking displays like this on laptops, especially laptops with i7 processors and RTX 4060s. Now, the good news is there are other versions of this laptop with HX processors and better display options. So you don't have to get this terrible display, but if you're looking at this specific unit, which I think might be, you know, specific to Canada, I'd probably skip it just because of the display alone. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, feel free to hit the like button. If you're new to the channel, subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one.